Happy Monday. Sean O'Connell Show starts now, but so does the Kyle Whittingham press conference, so we send it up to the Hill.
This week, and proud of those guys. Two great players for us. Both had outstanding NFL careers, and just can't say enough good things about what they meant to the program and how they've given back and just been great ambassadors for us. And so really appreciate what those guys have done for the program and mean to us, and we congratulate them. Let's see, it's been a while. West Virginia, last week. Really proud of the way our guys bounced back. No sign of a hangover or, they just played. They came out and played exceptional from the start and finished the game like we're supposed to, and had some really good performances. Offense got back on track, which was great to see. Defense was rock solid up until we took out all the starters midway through the fourth or so. And we gave up a few things after that point, but the starters did a great job. Special teams were solid. Liked the way our place kicker, Dylan Curtis, struck the ball, kickoffs, place kicks. So a lot of good things in that game. Thought we handled the road trip well. We went out a day early. When you travel 2 time zones and have a game on Saturday that's not a night game, it's kind of our formula for when we go out. If it would have been a night game, we would have gone out Friday as usual. But that's how we manage the East Coast trips. So Arizona back at Rice Eccles this week. Arizona State, excuse me, and night game at Rice Eccles. It's one of the best environments in the country at night. Anytime for that matter, but especially at night. And Sun Devils are playing good football. They've got 2 really outstanding players. Zero, the receiver, leading the conference in receiving, and number 3, the running back, is leading the conference in rushing. So those are really the 2 catalysts for their offense. In addition to the quarterback. Quarterback is dangerous, especially when he runs the football. He's done so much damage to teams this year, making big plays with his legs. And that's something that we got to try to keep in check if we can. Averaging about 4.25, 425 a game, total low, very balanced, about 215 rushing and about 210 throwing, so a balanced attack. Let's see, they're primarily a 12 team, a lot of 2 tight end personnel groups. That's probably about 60%, 70% of what they do, and then the rest of it is 11 personnel. Defense, very athletic and very fundamentally and technique sound. They're really good with their techniques and fundamentals, not overly elaborate schemes, but just solid defense, and they got good athletes. So that's where we're at. Questions?
I got Justin a question for you.
Okay. There's Justin.
Yeah. Do you have any plans to redshirt Bert Fickland or have him as QB2 the rest of the year? Is reaching his limit to declare his redshirt?
Good question. We're very pleased with what Bird's done. I can tell you that much right now. I would say that there is not a concerted effort right now to redshirt Bird. If we're going to play him, if he's needed, obviously, and then any experience that we can get him. And so I think the road we've been going down is the road we'll continue to go down. And like I said, he's really made the most of his snaps and has looked very poised and very in control when he's been out there. For a true freshman, he's seems to be very mature and handles his business very well.
Kyle, you came out banged up a little bit against West Virginia. Do you expect any of those to be season-ending injuries?
Good question. I was going to address that. I should have addressed that in my opening statements. None of those injuries were season-ending, and so just going forward, you'll just check the availability report on, I think it comes out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and maybe even Saturday. There's a lot of them. So anyway, check those, and that'll tell you the status. But no, fortunately, not season ending, but we'll see who we have available this week and who we don't.
If Kenny Ritchie has to miss extended time, who kind of moves into that starting safety spot?
Well, we've got Teo Johnson obviously playing the one safety, and then we have Nate Tillman, who came in and did some. He's another true freshman, played well in his snaps. He did make a few errors on last Saturday, but did some good things. Jackson Benny also has experience at safety. In fact, that's where he spent most of his time up until this year when we moved him to nickel. And so we have some options there. Also have a couple corners. We got some corners that are good size. Might look at moving one of those guys inside and seeing how he does this week. And probably be the Caldwell kid if we go that direction.
Last year, Cam Scatterby had a pretty significant game against you guys.
Against everybody. And he's doing it now with the Giants. He's doing a good job.
Do they kind of run the same thing, or because they have a guy like Jordan Tyson, who's one of the best receivers in the country, do you see them throwing the ball a little bit more?
Yeah, the more balanced and not leaning quite as much on the run game, although, like I said, the runner is leading the league in rushing, and so they do make sure that they, give a good dose of the run game. But Scatterbo, he was a guy that did us in last year, and really good football player. But they still have a real, they're making an effort to run the football and make sure that that's a big part of what they do.
Arizona State's been really good in one-score games over the last season and a half.
Yeah, they have.
What do you attribute that to?
Just making plays when they need to be made. They've been in some tight games this year, although they lost the Mississippi State game. That was a one-score game, but they have done a good job of pulling those games out and being on the winning end of those. And just all I can say is that when the time comes at the end of the game and things get tough, they make plays. Yes, you old ASU Sun Devil.
Listen to Arizona at the start. I'll overlook that.
It was tomatoes.
Going into the bye week, you said you were going to practice tackling.
Uh-huh.
What does that mean as far as how you actually go about that?
It means we practice tackling. We get a guy and we tackle him. What's that?
It's not technique or anything. It's just simply tackling.
Well, we coach the technique as we're doing the tackling drills, and it's not good on good. We have our scout guys, and so it's the defense. And in retrospect, we actually tackled really well. We only missed 10 tackles in the West Virginia game. They were magnified because they were in space and led to a lot of yards after contact. So I felt better about that than I did right after the game. But to answer your question, you get tackling drills with your scout guys and your starting defense and tackle guys. I mean, you absolutely critique it and film it and pay attention to the fundamentals and technique of your tackling. Yeah.
Coach Dillingham is going into his third year with Arizona State. Just from afar, what have you been impressed with most with what he's done there?
How he stayed the course, and because he had some rough spots the first year, things didn't go real well. I think that was the year we beat him 50-something, to not very much his first year, and he also had a few other rough games that year. But I've talked to him a few times, and he's we've conversed, and he's picked my brain a little bit, and just said, hey, if you believe in what you're doing, keep doing it. Don't question yourself. Don't panic. Just keep doing it. He's been doing it, and you can see the progress they've made. So he's stayed the course, I guess, is the best way I can term what he's done.
Kyle, in the last 2 years since entering the Big 12, you guys are 0-5 at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Does that put any emphasis going?
Say that again. The last 2 years.
Last 2 years, you guys are 0-5 in conference play at Rice-Eccles.
At Rice-Eccles? That sucks. I didn't know. I wasn't aware of that. I probably should have been, but okay.
Does that put any emphasis on this weekend's game?
Well, it hadn't. It might now, but I didn't realize that. Like I said, honestly, didn't go back. I mean, you lose and you're upset and you're mad. I guess you could delve into it further, but that's something. That's a trend we hope to break this week. How about that? So.
Versus West Virginia, you guys had your most passing yards in a single game. Is that something that you hope to continue as you guys head down the stretch? I feel like with pushing the ball downfield through the air a lot more.
Well, we certainly would like to keep pushing the ball downfield. And really, the word you're looking for in the throw game is efficiency. We don't need to throw for 300 and something yards a game. We need to be efficient when we do throw it. And we were very efficient against West Virginia. And part of that efficiency comes from being able to get chunk yardage down the field.
Dylan Bentley obviously has emerged as one of the top targets. What's kind of changed in his game from last season?
He's been able to stay healthy first and foremost. He's been with us 3 years now, going third year, And that's the thing that has held him back in the past, is just not able to stay on the field. Knock on wood, this year he's been able to stay healthy and be out there, and he's turned into the player that we hoped he would when we recruited him. And he's I think one of the better tight ends in the Big 12 right now.
Ryan Davis is also a big target for you guys. We've been asking you all season long which wide receivers are going to step up. Meanwhile, he just catches everything thrown to him. What do you see from him? Are you comfortable with him being kind of your main target guy?
Yeah, exactly that. He's dependable. He's reliable, which is, I guess, redundant. But he's got exceptional hands. He runs exceptional routes. And I use the term crafty, I think was the term I used last time we talked about Ryan, where he's not necessarily the biggest guy, the fastest guy, any of that stuff, but he's so good at what he does. He's got such a great feel and his natural instincts for finding open space, sitting down in those areas, and also his rapport with Devin. They obviously have a leg up on the other. He has a leg up on the other receivers in the room because of that. They were a good combination last year, and that's just carried over into this year. So that's a big part of it too, is their familiarity with each other.
Outside of rest and recovery, it feels like bye weeks are an important time for coaching staff to do a self-evaluation. As you dove into the tapes, where do you feel like you can make adjustments and make big improvements moving forward?
Well, I think we're just looking at it position by position. I think our offensive line has really played well this year so far. It hasn't been every single game, but we've overall, when you look at the body of work, I think they've done a good job. I think the running backs have made the most of their carry, especially Wayshawn. He's averaging good yards per carry average. I think it's over 6 yards a carry. They're close to it. Tight ends have been productive, really. You're talking about Dallin. Receivers, as we mentioned, more chunk yardage would be in order, but I think we're making progress there. Defensive front has been solid. John Henry Daly's been a big plus for us. He's still up there in the nation leaders in sacks, and I think he's first in the conference in caused fumbles and creating a lot of havoc for us. Linebackers have been outstanding as well. John O'Hall is just what we hoped he would be when we moved him to safety a little over a year ago. Lander Barton is playing his best football as a Ute. Secondary, I don't think the secondary has been really tested. I think there's bigger tests down the road for our secondary, and so we'll see how we continue to. And then with Nate, if he's, depending on how long he's out, how that secondary can perform. Special teams, some good, some bad, but that's kind of the short version right there.
Coach, arguably one of the conference's best quarterbacks, Sam Levitt's going to be on Saturday. Can you speak to his game?
Yeah, he's, like I said, he's so dangerous when he breaks the pocket. If you look at the big plays he's made this year, most of them have been with his legs and breaking the pocket at critical times. He picks up those third downs when seemingly there's nothing there, and he's got to pull it down and run. He's really dangerous when he does that. And like I said, the balance in their offense, that's part of the reason why they're good running the football. You got the best back, the top statistically back in the league, and him that makes for a potent ground attack, and he's done some good things in the throw game as well. Although his QB rating's not as high as some of the guys in the league, or as there's two ratings they use, the QB rating and the I can't remember what it is. It's just based on throwing. The QB rating takes everything into account. I don't know if you look at that at ESPN, and then your quarterback, your throws have a different rating system. So,
Kyle, you have back-to-back weeks coming up against ranked opponents. I know you've said you've wanted to see your team against tough opponents, and obviously this is probably a good litmus test for where you guys are at. I guess just from an identity standpoint, what are you hoping to see from your team the next 2 weeks to kind of establish whether or not they're a contender or not in the Big 12?
Well, continue to play consistently and finish games. That was our big problem in the Tech game a couple weeks back. We didn't finish very well. We were in the game all the way to the mid-fourth quarter, and then didn't do much the rest of the way. So that's something we need to do, is play the full 60 minutes. And I think that if we can continue to win the turnover margin, the one game we lost it, in dramatic fashion is the game we lost, and so that's something that we got to Yeah, I think we're 12th in the country, in the conference right now in turnover ratio, which is not good enough. We're usually up in the top third of the league in that, so that's something that's got to hopefully change as well. We got to do a better job of that. But if you want to win the conference, you got to stand toe to toe with the big boys and come away with wins. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Coach, with the rivalry game in a couple of weeks, having an opponent like Arizona State top 25, does that almost help that there's no way?
Don't even think about that game. That game hasn't entered my mind right now, so I can't answer that question.
Also, how do you see the Big 12 shaping up? Texas
Big
Tech,
12,
obviously.
yeah. Texas Tech is obviously the odds-on favorite. I mean, how can you not say that based on what's happened so far? Really good roster. Like I said, when we played them and after we played them, they've done a great job putting that roster together. There's always going to be surprises. Iowa State, getting beat by Cincinnati last week I didn't see that one coming, and so I think that there's probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 teams that still have a legit shot at winning the conference, but it's all got to go through Texas Tech right now. Thank you, guys. Girls, guys. Okay. How was the pizza today?
I haven't tried it
So,
yet.
okay, try it that way.
Oh, how was the pizza today? James, we're going to have to figure out a way to go up there, grab some of the pizza, and then make it back in time to start the show. Like maybe we'll pre-record this version or this portion of the show and then just jam down the hill. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Happy to be back. As most of you know, last week I was in Dubai calling some fights for the PFL. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point today. It was a big combat sports weekend. There was a huge UFC pay-per-view. And hopefully most of you got down there to watch that at Big Willie's. Presenting sponsor of the Sean O'Connell Show, 1717 South Main, the greatest place to catch any of the road games that you don't have tickets to for Utah football. Mammoth hockey coming up, Jazz basketball. They're going to have all of it, and they do all of the big pay-per-view fights. So if you don't want to fork over the $80, yes, it's now $80 to buy a single pay-per-view fight, then you can just go down, grab some food at Big Willie's, sit down, watch. Well, take advantage of the drink specials, take advantage of the food specials, and it's like a 3-4 hour kind of nice leisurely meal. It's awesome with some combat sports on your television. So Big Willie's hooks you up the same way they hook all of us up. They've got lunch specials going on right now. Head down to 1717 South Main. Tell them OC sent you. You heard Kyle Whittingham in the press conference talk about some things. The first bit of the best bit of good news that I think we could expect, and I'm tempering expectations here. He did say none of the injuries experienced by Utah against West Virginia have been deemed season-ending injuries. That's big, which means you keep an eye on the injury report. That'll tell you who's out for this week, but the Hunter Andrews, Jackson Benny, Nate Ritchie kind of situations are all wait and see, watch and see. And I know if you're Utah,
Hunter Andrews is out for this season.
Oh wait, no,
that was the week before.
That was the week before.
But the Jackson Benny and I think we all kind of assumed that Benny was not season ending. It looked a lot more minor.
It's a little more like precautionary, hold him out type of thing. And by the way,
but Nate looked
pretty
like
severe.
It was that ended his season. So that's great news. And who knows what that means? That could mean he's out till November.
It could mean he's out until like a projected bowl game or something.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna take the positive news for what it is right now, and I'm gonna say that's awesome. Here's the deal: if both of those guys are hurt at the same time, Jackson Benny and Nate Ritchie are hurt in a week by week basis at the same time, and respect to Tillman, who is at least for now, is the backup for Nate Ritchie at that safety spot, because, of course, you have no Rabbit Evans for the year. That's a freshman who looks like a freshman when he's back there. And Nate Ritchie made some mistakes this year, but they were more execution mistakes rather than positioning mistakes. And when you're a safety, the positioning mistakes can be so much more costly. The pre-snap read, the alignment, the get yourself into the throwing lane, like that kind of stuff. Where are you at on the football field for a safety is far, far more important than any other position. I guess corner, because if you're not where you're supposed to be, then the wide open receiver ends up scoring. But if you're a defensive back, right? If you're a linebacker who ends up playing yourself out of position, like, yes, it'll create a hole and your team's probably going to get gashed a little bit, but it's very rare that your linebacker is the last line of defense. If you're a safety who's playing himself out of position or making the wrong read or not communicating properly with the guys in front of you or whatever, it could be disastrous for a team. And actually, you saw last week, or no, it was 2 weeks ago when Nate Ritchie got banged up at the home game and had to come out of the game, not permanently, not for the game, but he had to come out of the game. He had to leave. They attacked Tillman. The alignment situation was not correct, and it was a wide-open completion because they were discombobulated in the back end of the Utah football defense. And I'm not saying this to heap on criticism for a guy who's doing his best and did do some nice things against West Virginia and even did a nice couple of things against Texas Tech when he came in. But if Jackson Benny can't be put back at that safety position, because that's a player that your coaches trust. And I'm making a lot of assumptions here and telling you that that's the direction that they will go. The reason I'm making those assumptions is because we have seen them put that level of trust in Jackson Benny, and we have seen him rise to the level of that trust and meet the expectation or exceed the expectation. So when you see the Thursday injury report, the Friday injury report, the Saturday injury report, what you need to keep an eye out for is our Nate Ritchie and Jackson Benny on the same plane? Are they on the same, this guy's out, this guy's questionable, this guy's doubtful, this guy's probable? If they're both in the same world on the negative end of things, that could be scary for Utah football, especially against this Arizona State team that is going to – Kenny Dillingham doesn't get cute, all right? Kenny Dillingham is going to watch film, and he's going to say, oh, man, look, 6 is out and 21 is in. If 21 is in against us, we're going to attack him. That's just how he's going to be. He's not going to overthink that. So as we get closer to the game, we'll discuss those individual things as we get more clarity on injuries being a problem or not. We'll talk about it. But for now, that is good news that the multiple players who left West Virginia game with some bumps and bruises in a big-time winning scenario, none of those are season-ending injuries, according to head coach Kyle Whittingham at today's press conference.
I'm frankly shocked that Nate Ritchie's is not, and definitely highly encouraged by that. Now, I'll be less encouraged if 3-4 weeks from now he's still just questionable every week or out every week. But it is good to know that they do plan on at some point having him back this season. Hopefully, it's this week or next week. It did sound like it's probably not this week, the way he was talking about what you were just saying about Jackson Benny, and the way he said, hey, Jackson's played safety before. I don't think he says that if they're planning on having.
If they're planning on him being available, Kyle Whittingham is not sitting down at the Monday press conference talking about
other options,
big
right?
Body corners that can move back to safety.
So
like
you're
not
probably not
Nate
this
Ritchie.
week.
And by the way, this is a perfect example of you always have to be kind of careful what you wish for, because there were plenty of people with the missed tackles that Nate Ritchie had. There were plenty of people who were texting in and saying, like, you got to find something else. You got to do something else. Nate Ritchie's not up to snuff. Well, now you're going to find out if the other options are even serviceable. Because Nate Ritchie, you can criticize some of the mistakes that he made, but as I've said many times on the show, he was in the right spot on the football field way more often than not. And yes, he missed too many tackles. But now we're going to find out if the guys behind him, the guys in replacement, are anywhere near his level. Morgan Scalley is not exactly a charity giver when it comes to reps at the safety position. You got to earn those. So if Nate Ritchie was out there doing it in practice and the other guys weren't, he was going to put Nate Ritchie in. And if you're one of those other guys and you're watching Nate Ritchie miss tackles in the game, that's him signaling. That's the flag being lifted to say, hey, there's an opportunity here for you to come in and take reps. But nobody did. And when I say nobody did, I mean nobody took his starting job away. So now that he's injured and you have to kind of forcibly surrender that starting job to somebody else, we might see exactly why even for some people, substandard performance from Nate Ritchie was being tolerated by this coaching staff. But keep an eye out on the injury report.
I also got to shout you out, OC, because he said a couple of things in the press conference. It's like that made it sound like he was listening to our show.
I promise.
Which, of course, he's not.
I promise Kyle Whittingham is a big-time listener to not this show, but whatever.
But the first one was you hypothesized Jackson Benny seems like the right guy to move out. Was that free safety that Nate Ritchie plays, that free safety position, because he's played safety before, and the way he plays corner, you can see a safety in there too if needed. Now, less credit to you because obviously they know what he's played before on that one. But the one that I give
I'll take whatever I got. I'll take whatever James Peterson bonus points are being handed out.
The points I give you, though, is when the former ASU guy from the other station says, hey, how do you practice tackling? And he says, and he jokingly doesn't answer the question and says, well, you practice tackling,
that's right,
man. But then he expounds by saying, you put your scout team players there, and you let your first team defense tackle the scout team players. Which is exactly what you were saying they should be doing to catch up from the work that they did not do during fall camp. So I give you tons of credit.
You have to do it. Tackling,
having that.
You have to tackle to practice tackling. It's like the technique, the breakdown. There's so many drills, all right? You've all seen the drills. There are so many drills designed to maximize a player's ability to tackle and maximize a running back or wide receiver or tight end or quarterback's ability to break tackles. There are so many, like, pantomime actions that we do as athletes, as football players, as coaches to try and simulate, this is, you run around this bag and you jump over this bag, and then a coach is standing there with a boxing glove on and he's going to try to punch the ball out. And all of those things are designed to minimize risk and maximize the simulated pressure of not being tackled. The only way to actually do it is to tackle and to avoid being tackled. The only way to practice it is to actually really, truly do it.
As you said before, the only way to practice it while also being wary of we don't want our first team guys to get hurt in practicing tackling is by having the scout team guys and the whatever walk-ons are left be the tackling dummies,
you
right?
Know how miserable this bye week was for the team walk-ons, if there are any left, and for the scout team guys, because here's the other thing about it that I guess this is the only good thing about me being a terrible college football player. I can give you this tiny little bit of insight. There's not only do you have to go and get beat up on by guys who are bigger, stronger, faster, better than you, but you have to do it while also not being your best. The coaching staff doesn't want you to actually avoid the tackle. They don't want you to actually try to run through the contact. They want you to get tackled.
Be a bowling pin.
They want you to do enough to give the guy a good look, but they don't want you to win that rep. They don't want you trying to stiff-arm Lander Barton's face into the dirt. You probably can't do it anyway because you're a walk-on or you're a scout team guy, but they don't want you doing it. They don't and if you do it, there's the other thing here. Even if there's one coach out there, there's the GA who's getting you all riled up, just let's go. We're doing half line. We're doing an Oklahoma drill right now. I'm going to put this ball in your hand, and you're going to give me 110%, and you're going to chop those feet, and you're going to run right through Jonnu Hall. You're going to put your face mask on his chest, and you're going to blast right through him.
Or you're going to juke him out of his pads.
And you're just like, yes, let's go. And you're getting all fired up. First of all, that GA, does not have your best interest in mind, okay? He doesn't know. He doesn't care if you get another rep for the rest of your life. He doesn't care if Kyle Whittingham likes you. He doesn't care, especially if Jonnu Hall likes you. Because what happens is if you try to run over Jonnu Hall, if you're like, and Jonnu's, it's practice. He's a starter. He's got bumps and bruises from actual gameplay, right? So he's at practice, even in the hard reps, he's going like 85%. And you're the guy who goes 100% and you actually try to win that rep. You know what the starters say to you? You know what they think of you? Just like, okay, scout team all-star. Okay, you have never been called a more offensive name than the things that you hear from starters when you're actually trying at practice. What a miserable week of practice the scout team guys had. But
by the way,
they were tackled, they practiced tackling, and the tackling should be better as a result.
I was going to say, I don't think Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley, Jason Beck, I don't think that they would actually hold. They probably hold the the GAs accountable in those situations when the walk-on makes occasionally, very rarely wins that matchup. I don't think they go, why'd you tell him to do that? No, they probably take it out on the walk-on and the scout team player, right? Like, come on, man.
They're just like, hey, don't damage the goods. Like, the worst thing you could do as a scout team player is, like, somehow get knocked off your feet during a rep, because that's when people get injured. Someone loses the feet, you get rolled up on, you roll up on somebody, they get piled up on. If you lose your footing because you're trying too hard, they're just going to be like, okay, run to the fence and don't come back. Anyway, no one wants to hear about the life of a scout teamer. But the good news and the most important point there is that, they were during the bye week taking advantage of the opportunity to go out there and correct one of the wrongs that you've seen in important situations in the season so far. They're not just missing tackles. Like when the backups are in, you had in that Texas Tech game, after your offense scored in the fourth quarter to bring it within 3, the only touchdown your offense scored in the game. It's still very much up for grabs. The momentum is back. There were like 6 missed tackles on the ensuing Texas Tech drive that allowed them to score. That's a massively important juncture in a game. You have to tackle. You have to make plays there. And Kyle Whittingham noted that about this week's opponent, Arizona State. They don't make mistakes like that. That's why they win tight games. Anyway, 877-353-0700. Let's start our conversation. Let me know what you're thinking about this Arizona State game. We're going to take a quick one here. We're going to come back with Ari Temkin, Big 12 Today on TuneIn Radio, Big 12 Insider, after another crazy weekend in this conference that Utah and BYU now both occupy. Sean O'Connell Show just getting started on a Monday. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Well, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday. Wild weekend in Utah football. It was a bye, all right, and that could lull you to sleep a little bit as a fan, a diehard, hardcore fan of one particular team. Maybe you weren't quite as enthusiastic about watching all the games this past weekend. BYU handled business impressively against West Virginia. Bear Bachmeier had a 350-yard passing day. Now, I get it. West Virginia, as we know, having watched them against Utah, not a very good team right now. But the BYU freshman Bear Bachmeier got loose a little bit. Chase Roberts had 4 catches for 161 yards. Talk about tackling issues. West Virginia had some against the Cougs. But 38-24, BYU gets it done to improve to 5-0. And I know that Kyle Whittingham at the press conference said, I haven't even thought about that game that's happening next week. He was asked a question about the rivalry game and the timing of, back-to-back opponents and ranked opponents and things like that. And he did the coach speak thing and said, haven't even thought about that game. You as a fan, you could think about that game. Going to be on the road at Rice-Eccles on the road at LaBelle Edwards Stadium. And look, it's going to be a critical game. Now, BYU is in a bit of a look-ahead spot this week. Arizona, much to our surprise, is a better team than we thought they would be, at least on paper, what their record shows. At 4-1, I think their win total was 3.5 in Vegas for Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. Heading into the preseason, like they're a better team than we thought they were going to be. So 6 p.m. kick was announced for BYU and Utah, primetime opportunity. And Utah gets a win against Arizona State this weekend. They're back in the rankings. BYU, I think, is still going to get a win against Arizona, even if they don't. We're talking about 2 top 25 teams, 2 teams still very much in the hunt for a Big 12 championship. Everything to play for. And you got to do it in a rivalry scenario. And you got to do it against a freshman quarterback in a hostile environment in a place where you haven't won the last game. Last time you dropped the ball, literally and figuratively. And by the way, you don't want to, it's back-to-back wins for BYU. We all saw what happened last year. You don't want to let them build a streak. You don't want to let it be 3 in a row. So
it's certainly not back-to-back years because it was 2019, then 2021, then 2024. Like this, it's different when it's consecutive years.
It is, and with Arizona State game this weekend, you talk about critical importance, about these sliding doors that open or shut for you as a human being in your life. As a football program, these next 2 weeks are of existential, critical importance for Utah football.
Ute-Mageddon 2.0.
I'm not going to go full Ute-Mageddon right now, but think about it. Think about what you've got, okay? You've got a team that if we had done a preseason Big 12 poll, it would have been Arizona State as the presumed champion. They would have been number 1, and 1B would have been Texas Tech because of everything that they did in the transfer portal.
I could see that.
And then, BYU would have probably been 7. Utah probably would have been 4 in the voting. But you have an opportunity on your home field with an offense that is as good or better than anything you've seen since your Pac-12 championship years at Utah to go against an Arizona State defense that defends the run really well but gives up kind of a lot of points. All right? You've got a winnable game against a team that is top 25 right now and is last year's conference champion, and who, by the way, you should have beaten the Valley of the Sun last year. You would have beat if you just had anything better than a 25% banged up Cam Rising, who, by the way, was being given his final – that was his, you know what, Cam, we're not going to pull you out of this game because the saga of your injury and the long wait to get you back on the field has been such a drain on this program, on your teammates, on the fan base, on the coaching staff, on you. We are, even though you got critically injured on the second play of the game, we are not going to pull you out right now. We are going to let you die on your sword. We're going to let you, that's the wrong term. We're going to let you go out swinging. We're going to let
give you a swan song.
Like, that was such a weird scenario for Utah football and for Cam Rising specifically, because it was like, if any other quarterback, and I mean any other quarterback, like if Devin Dampier, who everybody loves and this coaching staff is like totally enamored with for good reason, and the fan base has jumped on board with, if he got hurt the exact same way and had the exact same follow-up performance after being injured on that second play of the game that Cam did in like the first half of that game, any other human being gets pulled out of that game. But because of
Isaac Wilson would have been pulled out of the game if that happened to him.
You would have just been like, all right, Batari, we're going with you.
Yeah.
But because of what the waiting game that we had all played, and Cam wanted to go out there and do it. And like Kyle Whittingham said post-game he wanted to keep playing. Okay, what? Like we all saw, right? You should have beat Arizona State, the eventual conference champion last year. Revisionist history is lame in college sports, so the shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on it, but you have this opportunity. Kenny Dillingham coaches nervous against Kyle Whittingham because that's like one of his coaching heroes, okay? And maybe that's, now that he's beat him, that's a little bit less of a thing. That's not this monkey on his back anymore. But this is such a winnable game. You have to win it, though. When I say it's winnable, I don't mean because you have a massive talent advantage or anything like that. What I mean is you are in the same conversation as Arizona State. You're in the same conversation as BYU. You're actually still in the same conversation as Texas Tech if you don't shoot yourself in the foot several times in that game. But against Arizona State coming off a bye, you could not have asked for mid-season a better scenario than this one. You get the extra time to get guys healed up. You have now 5 games under your belt, 6 weeks under your belt in order to figure out exactly who you really are as a team. Is that offensive line what you thought it was going to be? Who are your defensive stars? Who can you trust? Who can't you trust? It is, you have to win this game. Must win is cliche and overused, but you have to win this game for so many reasons. 1, so that you stay in the Big 12 championship conversation. 2, so you have momentum going into a rivalry game where your rival is pretty damn good, right? 3, because in the big picture scenario, you're trying to let this be the swan song, the ride off into the sunset year for Kyle Whittingham. And if it's another bad year, if it's another, oh man, we had opportunities, but we didn't capitalize on them, and we ended up with a 7-5 team, it's not quite so obvious how the succession plan goes to work. It's not going to be quite so obvious that it is the appropriate time. Kyle Whittingham is so competitive that if he has another bad year and he sees some of the young talent on this roster, he's going to be like, man, that's tempting though. Like
unfinished business.
I mean, it is the exact same thing that you see in the NFL, in combat sports, in like it doesn't happen as much in baseball and in the NBA because like those are not as punishing on the body necessarily, and it's not as obvious when the game has passed you by, when the sport has passed you by. In a physical sport, when a guy hangs around too long, he hangs around too long because he thinks he's going to get some sort of redemptive performance and be able to walk out on his own terms. Like, I don't want to make too many claims for a Utah fan base, but like this is supposed to be the year where Kyle gets to ride off in the sunset because you've got this offensive line, you've got now a coordinator and a quarterback that can deliver you some big wins, and you should compete for this conference championship. But these next 2 weeks are going to determine whether or not that is true. And this week, when I say the next 2 weeks, I mean, if you don't win this week, then next week is all about the pride and the bragging rights and, hey, can we beat BYU? If you dig yourself a hole and lose a tiebreaker against Texas Tech and Arizona State, you ain't in the conference championship game, Utah fans.
Yeah, they definitely. I'm glad you brought this to the beginning of the show here, OC, because I was thinking about this all weekend. That Utah has to win the next 2 weeks. You can maybe afford a loss. The other obviously good team at this point that we see on the schedule is Baylor in mid-November, and then we'll see. Maybe Kansas ends up being one of those really good teams. The last parts of this year, they've only been okay. Cincinnati's on the schedule. They got a really big win against a banged up Iowa State team. They may end up being a team that ends up being a really good team you face. But the only other obvious one right now is Baylor. You can maybe afford a slip up to that team, maybe, but you can't lose to your rival again. Nope. That's a given.
Nope.
Especially when they might, with that tiebreaker, might just be in the championship game instead of you. And you can't lose to another. You can't lose back to back, or you can't lose your first two games against teams that people think are going to be in the conference championship game, and then you still have enough confidence and enough momentum to go through and make it happen. I don't see that being the case, OC. And that's why this week, beyond the tiebreakers that you're talked about, that's for me why this week is so important, because you just got destroyed by Texas Tech in the fourth quarter mainly, and you're going to follow that up with a loss to ASU a couple weeks later. I don't know how you come back from that and still make the conference championship.
Also, Rice-Eccles Stadium, you heard Kyle Whittingham reacting to the to the news that it's been 0-5 against conference opponents at home. And he's like, that sucks.
Yeah, he had no idea.
That surprised me, honestly. But it can't be 0-6. I mean, I'm not here to tell you that anything other than a win this week ruins your day, ruins your weekend, ruins your season, but it kind of does.
Technically, there's plenty of time for Utah to come back from a loss against ASU this week, but I just don't. I don't know if I see it.
In reality, like, then your bounce back game is going to be against BYU. Okay. You pull that off, and that's awesome. Texas Tech put everyone in the conference on notice when they came into Rice-Eccles Stadium and they rolled out with that final score. Anyone who actually watched the game saw that Texas Tech dominated the line of scrimmage, and even though Utah was able to hang around and it still was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter, like, Texas Tech made the plays necessary. Oh, and by the way, they did it using the backup quarterback, who ended up being more of a threat to Utah's defense than the starting quarterback was, right? And by the way, they did it by all of the guys that they went out and paid for being really damn good, with the exception of Jacob Martinez, the linebacker.
Yeah.
Whose wife is a helicopter pilot.
And she's now a celebrity herself, because every broadcast she's like front and center.
Texas Tech went out there and they raised their hand, they planted their flag, and they said, we are exactly who we told you we were going to be. And everyone else in the Big 12 Conference, I mean everyone else, still has a big old question mark next to their name. Texas Tech is the only team that has made a definitive statement so far about who they really are. And they did it, unfortunately, against your Utes.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be who a lot of the experts and a lot of the pundits and a lot of the fans still think you are, you have to start proving it this week. And when I say start proving it, it's because, James, you just went through some of the, well, yeah, we think the obvious, like Baylor's the obvious stuff, but now Cincinnati suddenly is chosen to be good. Houston all of a sudden is scary. Kansas can beat anybody because they've got
six-year quarterback, man.
As long as your freakish quarterback is healthy, you could beat anyone. That UCLA showed us that this past weekend against Penn State. The worst team in power football woke up, got strong play out of a re-energized quarterback who's incredibly talented. We saw that. And all of a sudden they knock off a top 10 team in the country. We're going to have a conversation about how that's just as much of an indictment against Penn State as it is a compliment for UCLA.
Absolutely.
But the point stands that any team in this conference that has good quarterback play is somebody you got to reckon with. So Arizona State, Sam Leavitt is not good as a passer this year, but he's incredibly opportunistic and dangerous as a runner. All right? Bear Bachmeier, whether you like me saying this or not, is ahead of the curve right now as a true freshman, as a dual threat.
Certainly improving as a passer the last couple weeks.
And you've got these other games that we, in the preseason, had kind of penciled in as automatic wins for Utah that are far from automatic wins. So the margin for error against other good teams, there are 9 teams right now in the Big 12 Conference that are 4-1 or better. 9 teams. That means there are 9 teams in the conference as we approach the halfway mark of the season that are still mathematically firmly in the conference championship race. Texas Tech and BYU fully control their own destiny right now as undefeated teams, right? Everyone else that's a one-loss team, and even Baylor that's a 4-2 team, they're still in the conversation. But 9 teams in this conference that are 4-1 or better. By the way, it doesn't include Baylor because Baylor's 4-2, not 4-1. Their win percentage.
So there's 10 with Baylor, a team that we still believe that can go on a run and see themselves in the running for a Big 12 championship game.
In the Pac-12 conference, you had kind of this, even though there was a lot of parity and there was a lot of chaos, what you really had was 4 teams every year that were like hunting for a championship, and maybe a 5th team could include themselves in the conversation. And then everyone else kind of beat each other up so much that if you lost to Oregon State, seemed to be a team that Utah would stub their toe against. Arizona would be a team that Utah would stub their toe against, right? You would lose those games and we would lament the loss, but you would be like, oh my gosh, there was no tiebreaker implication there. Against Arizona State and against BYU, these games are hyper important. The margin for error has gone from razor thin to completely absent. The turnover thing that Kyle Whittingham addressed in the press conference today, hey, we got to be better than 12th in the conference in our turnover ratio. You're damn right. If you're on that level against Arizona State and against BYU these next 2 weeks, your season becomes regrettable. It comes down Saturday, red out, Rice-Eccles Stadium, night game, night atmosphere, the restoration of the horror house that it is supposed to be for a Big 12 conference, and it has not yet been for a Big 12 conference. One of the most critical games in Utah football's home history. And that's not hyperbole, because the stakes, the ripples, you throw that rock into the pond with a win, big things. You throw the rock into the pond with a loss, those waves, all of them are bad. Recruiting, in-state recruiting, no longer in the conference conversation, the gap widening between Texas Tech and everyone else. Utah football's season, in a lot of ways, comes down to Saturday night. 877-353-0700. With that in mind, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what you think the most critical player is, what you think the most critical juncture in this game is going to be, the most critical matchup. We're going to spend the entire week talking about how Arizona State and Utah match up. I've taken way too much time. We'll get a quick break here on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show continuing here. We'll do a quick segment as I recap for you. I just made the point that there are so many teams in the hunt still in the conference championship race. Houston finally lost. They lost to Texas Tech convincingly, 35-11. Texas Tech took control of that one in the first quarter and never let go. Cincinnati, James alluded to this already, beat Iowa State, handing the Cyclones their first loss of the season. Baylor outlasted Kansas State 35-34 over the weekend. Arizona beats up on Oklahoma State, who is just in the worst type of way at this point. TCU, 35-21 victory over Colorado. Deion Sanders, this is his last year coaching. Deion's going to leave. He's not enjoying the process right now, and he's having more health problems. He thinks that he has a doctor's appointment today. Deion talked about he thinks he's got more blood clots, and he had obviously blood clot issues earlier in his life that led to him. He's lost some toes to it. He's got circulatory problems. Obviously, he had the cancer scare. Deion is not going to spend a lot more time in that coaching seat. So we'll be talking about that in this offseason as how appealing is that job? Are they going to roll out a red carpet for $10 million a year for the next guy? Probably not. That things have gone sour, I think, in Boulder at this point. And TCU is one of those teams in the Big 12 that probably isn't being talked about enough. I still think that TCU is very much in contention. They are one of the teams that's 4-1 or better right now. If you throw in Kansas and Baylor, who both have 4 wins, there are 11 teams in the conference with 4 wins or better as we head into, for most, the 6th week of play. For Kansas and Baylor, they've already played 6 games. But
is this their bye week? There must be.
I think it is.
It's got to be this week or next if they played every
UCF
week. UCF
over the weekend, and they've got a road game against Texas Tech coming next Saturday. No, that's this. Sorry, that's this coming Saturday.
Huh.
So
did they have a September? Anyway, they got to be having a bye.
They have a late bye, so their bye comes after Texas Tech, Kansas.
And then they
after Texas Tech, and then they've got Kansas State.
Then their second bye is in November. Then wow, all right,
that would be
that's quite the placement of buys. It feels like BYU's is the opposite. I think their bye is after the Utah game, if I'm not mistaken, and then
that's interesting.
And that'll be their second bye.
Kansas has a bye after this weekend against Texas Tech. Then they've got 2 games, and then a bye.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it sets up for them to have a nice end of the season, which, unfortunately for Utah, if that ends up being the case, final week of the season is the Kansas game on the road. But it's funny you bring up Colorado because as bad as it has looked at times for them, they've also had back-to-back weeks against really good teams, BYU and then TCU, 14-point leads in the first quarter. So all of what you said about Deion Sanders not enjoying the process and them losing a lot more than he probably thought they would and other people thought they would at this point, they've shown in the last 2 weeks, albeit in losses, Utah can't take them lightly either on the 25th. That's a huge potential trap game after these 2 weeks against potential Big 12 championship teams, ASU and then BYU. Then you cannot sleep on Colorado, even though their record is not very good.
Yeah, Colorado is going to be one of those interesting teams for everyone this year because at their best, with depending on which quarterback you face, at their best they can beat you. At their worst, you will absolutely blow them out. The floor and the ceiling for Colorado, the gap on that, like Utah's floor and Utah's ceiling. Even in really bad games, Utah's not necessarily going to get killed by like a bad team. Same thing I think is true for BYU because the defense kind of keeps you in it. For Colorado, if you don't get moving offensively, it's just going to be a disaster of a day. So the gap between them at their best and them at their worst is 2 different teams effectively. Text line coming in. I'm not sure why you guys are acting like we lost the game already from 16-24. Not acting like that at all.
We're just telling you what the stakes are.
I'm driving home the point of this being a massively important game, which, by the way, means that a win here, and I think I'm not going to give you my pick just yet, but spoiler alert, I think Utah's going to win this game. Like, a win here, the same way I talk about how devastating a loss could be, a win here is on the opposite end of that spectrum. A win here is you beat last year's conference champion. You beat the guy that the team that a lot of people thought would be this year's conference champion. You set yourself up in at least one of those tiebreaker scenarios in a really good spot, and you come in with a signature win over a top 25 team as you head out on the road for your rivalry game. That is such a huge confidence builder. And by the way, if you're going to beat Arizona State, the way you're going to beat Arizona State is you're playing Utah football. In order to get this thing done, you have to play the way that we think this team is capable of playing, which means you've got pressure on the passer. You've kept him inside the pocket and corralled him on those third downs, which, of course, he leaked out last year and hurt you so many times on those. You've put up 28 points or more in that game in order to get the victory, and you've overperformed the rush total that Arizona State has been able to hold their opponents to all year long. So if you're getting this win on Saturday, you are setting yourself up on the positive side for all the things that you have to fear on the negative side. So
yeah, we're just letting you know what the stakes are, texters and all of our listeners. Also, please don't excuse or confuse objectivity with negativity. We're giving you the stakes. We're telling you that it's not guaranteed. And I think all of you know that Utah is not a perfect team. There are flaws with this team, which makes when they go up against another team that has aspirations to be and realistic expectations to be in the conversation for a Big 12 championship game, we are wary of the fact that maybe those flaws will show up. That's all. And just like you and all of us are hopeful of the idea that they will not show up in a meaningful way. This is a high stakes game. That's all we're saying.
All right, we got to take a quick one here. Come back and we'll be checking in with Scott Mitchell, host of the Down and Dirty, color analyst on the Utah Radio broadcasts, and, of course, the Utah quarterbacking legend. Coming out of a bye week, what does he expect from the Utes? We'll find out next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792 on FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. We welcome Scott Mitchell to the show, talk a little Utah football. You'll hear him on the broadcast Saturday night, Rice-Eccles Stadium, 8:15 kick, night game. Should be a fun one against Arizona State. The ranked Sun Devils are, of course, last year's Big 12 Conference champions, and a team that a lot of people thought are on their way to at least a repeat potential. Scott Mitchell, how are you?
Doing wonderful. Crazy weekend in college football and the NFL, and fun to talk about it. Real excited to get back into things. I don't like bye weeks. Let's get them over with. I want to play games. I want to be in the thick of things. So I'm excited and happy to be here.
Scott, I have some people expressing their chagrin because I came on in the opening segment after Kyle Whittingham's press conference. I talked about this week being of mega critical, hypercritical, existential importance for Utah football. I really feel like in a lot of ways your season boils down to what happens on Saturday night. Am I overselling that?
Oh, not at all. I mean, with one conference loss, you're definitely you're not out of it, but you're certainly not in the driver's seat. Iowa State losing to Cincinnati changes things up, but this is going to be a 4 or 5 team race, and really to me, this game against Arizona State is the game of the lurkers. Like they're teams with kind of a little forgotten. I mean, Arizona State's 2-0 in the conference, and you don't have to win the conference. You just have to be one of the top 2 teams at the end of it, and that's kind of the thinking you have to have right now if you're Utah. But I think Arizona, with the loss to Mississippi State, everyone said, well, they're kind of, they're out of it. They're maybe not the same team they were, and yet they very sneakily have won. They won at Baylor. They beat TCU. They're very quietly in a very good position. And so they're kind of, everyone's talking Texas Tech, and BYU's 5-0, and Cincinnati beat Iowa State. And so they're like, those are kind of the teams to watch out for. And even Iowa State still, and Utah, BYU, or Utah, Arizona State are kind of in that lurking spot. Like, people aren't really talking about, this game or these two teams as those contenders, but we're very much in the thick of it here at Utah and at Arizona State. So it's an amazing game. This is an incredible game for the rest of this year.
Last year at Arizona State, Utah was very much in it, going down late, and they were in it despite, a quarterback who couldn't step into his throws. They were in it despite a bunch of guys being banged up. And I think that if the touchdown scored by Pittman doesn't get called back on a pick play penalty, I think that ultimately you end up winning that game. You also were in that game despite the fact that Arizona State had the second best running back in the country, who was just a trump card in Cam Scatterbo. They don't have him now. And as was addressed in the press conference today with Kyle Whittingham, it changes their play calling quite a bit. Now they've got a great wide receiver. They've got a mobile quarterback who has had some struggles throwing the ball this year, but has been very timely with his legs. I know it's like this, as personnel changes in college football, but when you remove someone from a roster who is as good and as impactful as somebody like Cam Scatterbo, how much does it change this game in 2025?
I don't think it changes the game, but it's in the sense that it's going to be a great battle. The Arizona State is a very seasoned team. Like they've been in big games. They've figured out how to close out big games. Other than kind of a fluke play, they'd be undefeated right now. And that's the thing I look at, is they're a very mature team, and the quarterback pretty much puts the ball in his hands at the end of a game, whether it's running the ball or some timely passing. But he's a guy that is very comfortable in being competitive. And so to me, that's the game, that it's going to be a very competitive game. They're going to fight the whole entire game. You gotta come ready to figure out how to close out a game. And that's the thing I want to see from this Utah team that I haven't seen. Can you finish a game? Can you close out a game? Because you haven't really had. I mean, you had to against Texas Tech, and you kind of failed in that situation. It'll be interesting to see where Devin Dampier is, if the week off has actually helped him to get really healthy, because if he becomes multi-dimensional, then this offense becomes very dynamic for Utah, and they can be much more productive than maybe they have been against good teams. And so, I don't know what the bye week will do for Utah. I got to believe it helps, and Devin Dampier is that key piece to it. But it's going to be a battle, and it's going to be a great game, and you got to play for 60 minutes. You got to learn how to finish.
Scott, when you're playing quarterback and a team comes in and they've got, their starting safety is out and they're playing a rookie, they're playing a young guy, they're playing a freshman behind him. What do you do as a play caller and as a quarterback to take advantage of that?
Well, you're certainly going to go, Jordan Tyson is probably a top 10 pick in the draft. You're going to find opportunities to expose that and challenge that. You have to. I mean, they'd be foolish not to. And so, the defense is pretty good. The secondary is pretty good, and there's there's a lot of other pieces there, and you really want to put someone in a position to not be totally exposed, and you can do certain coverages and ways to kind of help yourself out a little bit.
Scott Mitchell is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about Utah, Arizona State. We'll get to some of the happenings in the NFL and college football at large as we progress in this conversation. But, you mentioned that as a fan, bye week's not ideal, right? Hopefully everyone got the yard work done last weekend, and now you can focus in on what's going on with Utah versus Arizona State. But for a team to win the bye week, especially a team that has some injuries and has been banged up, what does that look like for Utah this year, winning this bye week? You already alluded to, Devin Dampier getting a little bit healthier. Kyle Whittingham announced that, Jackson Benny, not a season-ending injury, Nate Ritchie, not a season-ending injury, et cetera. So how do you get better in the bye week to get ready for Arizona State and make sure that this last, off weekend was put to good use?
Well, I think you have to, the offensive production and development of certain players, especially those defensive players, and maybe with the injuries, maybe you're going to see less of Smith Snowden and maybe less of Lander Barton than maybe you would have. You certainly, Daniel Bray is a guy that showed some promise. You might see more of J.J. Buchanan, who's showing promise, and then the evolution of Ryan Davis and Dallin Bentley. I still think Tobias Harris is a part of things. I think Larry Simmons is a guy that you can get involved. I don't. So I think it's taking advantage of finding other targets, at least offensively, to develop and getting them some reps and getting them comfortable with certain, maybe developing some of the packages that they're involved in. That's certainly one thing. Health is absolutely another. And then if you're going to have these younger guys in playing, they're going to relish getting the extra practice time and getting some confidence. Now, they don't have the game speed confidence, but it'll certainly help to get to a certain level of, at least we know they know what to do in a game. Now, can they go execute it at a high level against in a full speed Big 12 game? That remains to be seen. But I think the bye week, I like the bye week for Utah. I think they've come at a really good time, and I think there's a lot of value. As I've said before on your show, so much of it is about having an honest conversation about where you are, and you have the luxury of doing that because normally you're just on to the next week, and so it's looking for tendencies, it's looking for ways, because you're in a tight race, and you've got to find any advantage you can get. So when you have a chance to look through, and maybe there's things you do, play calls you call against your tendencies, or maybe you put in a play that in the right situation can be a game changer, might be a special team situation. You're always looking for just that little advantage, because anything will be huge against Arizona State. It'll be huge even going into BYU. And, of course, now Cincinnati looks like it's a team to worry about. I don't know so much about Colorado, but Arizona State, BYU, and Cincinnati coming up in the next month that's a tall order.
I thought against Texas Tech, I mean, look, Utah lost the line of scrimmage battle against Texas Tech, but when you go back and you watch that game, some of the blame for that belongs to play calling. And we talked about this, that you didn't really just allow your guys to pin the ears back and go downhill. Against West Virginia, it felt like Jason Beck learned from the mistakes against Texas Tech, and he called better plays. The run scheme was more downhill. They attacked the middle of the field in the passing game a little bit more. And so often you'll hear coaches, Coach Whittingham sit down in a post-game presser and say, oh, we should have done this, we should have done this. And then 2-3 weeks later, you're like, they're still not doing that. It felt like against West Virginia, we only have that one-game sample size, they kind of went out and they corrected some of the things that they were doing wrong from a scheme standpoint against Texas Tech. This is probably a two-part question. A, do you agree with that? And B, if you call better plays like you did against West Virginia, against Arizona State, do we expect similar results, the same results? Because Arizona State is a better team, but I think that fixes some of those problems. It allows you to take advantage of the strength of your offensive line, even against a really good run defense that the Sun Devils are putting up. Where do you stand on these things?
So I think my vibe from after the Texas Tech game was this team wasn't ready for a big game, like maturity-wise. And I don't know, Jason Beck, bless his heart, and I think he's doing a wonderful job. He's still young in the world of big games. I don't think he had any big games at Syracuse. I don't think he had big games, at New Mexico. Not like Texas Tech, big noon, everyone's there. And it's not just they're there all week. Urban Meyer's at practice. He's a legendary coach. They're getting a lot of pub. This offense, boy, looks amazing, and these long drives and scoring touchdowns, and I think they got a little ahead of themselves, a little full of themselves, and I don't think they played well. And I think if you ask Jason, he goes, I don't think I coached well, and that was the sense I got from it. And it's just my opinion. But I just got a sense that the players felt like they lost the game more than Texas Tech won it, and I think Utah's a better team than they showed in that game. And yeah, it was massively impressive. In fact, Devin Dampier in the West Virginia game and the correction he made, I think is something they've been trying to figure out from when he was at New Mexico. He's not a very good thrower. And I think they were trying to figure that out in the spring. I think they were trying to figure it out in the fall. I think they were trying to figure it out in their non-conference games, especially against Cal Poly. And the UCLA game was kind of a mix of things, but I think they figured something out. I mean, Devin Dampier, in all that I've watched him, the game against West Virginia was absolutely the best he's thrown the football all year, and it was needed. And so if you can continue to do that, he can continue to run dynamically, or start to anyways. And they really get this offensive line moving forward. Utah can be very explosive, and absolutely you want to see it. Because if you don't, then they're going to crowd the box. They're going to challenge you to throw the ball. And if you can't do it, it's going to be very similar to how things were a year ago, or how they were against Texas Tech. An offense that's stifled, that's going to score 10, maybe 17 points a game, and you're going to be in a lot of close games, and you're going to lose a lot of close games because you're not powerful, explosive enough offensively to finish games. And if you can figure that out and challenge defenses down the field throwing the football, it's going to open everything else up for you.
Should Penn State fire James Franklin?
Holy bananas. Look, college football is an interesting thing right now, and I don't know that we're fully grasping the impact of all of the movement of players. And so it's about players gelling. It's about players, getting better. It's about attrition. These big time blue blood programs don't get to stockpile players like they used to in the past. And so you don't have the depth, and depth actually hurt you in practice too. I mean, you think about Alabama, their 2s, 3s, and 4s are NFL players, and so their 1s and 2s are practicing against NFL players every day. I mean, when they have all of that talent in one area, and now these players go, wait a minute, I don't want to sit around. I can go play somewhere, and I can get paid to do it. And I'm a backup at Alabama, and I'm going to go somewhere and be a star. That changes things, and it spreads out the talent across the board. And you see things like, UCLA surprising a Penn State. One of the things that I'm still really curious about, and I'm actually doing some research on it, is the impact of long travel across the country and how it impacts your play, both in the game you're playing and then next week, because I think it has an impact. And so with these conferences that have gone coastal, and I just wonder if that has an impact on the quality of the product you're putting on the field. And it's still relatively early because this is a new phenomenon, but maybe there's something to that as well. So I'm not surprised by anything that happens in college football. And for that, I don't know that you need to fire a coach over the craziness that could be college football. But man, as bad as UCLA's looked, it's certainly not a good look for a Penn State team that was really considered one of the top teams in the country.
Well, it's interesting to me because James Franklin, the criticism of him in the past has been he doesn't show up when the lights are brightest, right? Like when Oregon comes to town for the whiteout game, that's the game that everyone is like, oh my gosh, you can't win these games, dude. Like that's what they criticize him for. But then these games where you're playing against an overmatched UCLA team who's been terrible this year, he never loses those games. He doesn't, like his teams don't stub their toe in winnable games. It's always like the, falling short when it really matters. If you lose back-to-back weeks, one game that was like that, okay, this is potential national title implications, much less the Big Ten. Already people are like, oh, here's regular old James Franklin. But then there's no chance. You don't even think about the fact that you could lose to UCLA. And to have the two things happen back-to-back when your expectations at Penn State are supposed to be national championships, it just feels like there's going to be some conversations out there.
You're in a conference, you're at a school that there's an expectation there, and it's a high expectation. It's it's a high stakes deal, and you have to answer to it. I mean, if you're not comfortable with that, then yeah, it's the wrong place for you. But you have to wonder, and just understanding the dynamics of football, you have a very emotional loss, like you mentioned against Oregon, whiteout game. It's a big deal, and then you got to travel all the way across the country. And you have to play a team that, and you go, is your focus the same during the week? Is your preparation the same? And that's on the coach. You got to get yourself ready to play. But we're human, and we tend to, end up at the lowest common denominator. We just tend to always go to that, that easiest place for ourselves. And just human nature. It's very easy to get complacent, as they say, don't let this, don't lose this game twice kind of thing. And from the emotion of it, but it's a real thing, it's a drain on you and to try to get yourself amped up the next week. And again, traveling all the way across the country, I think there's a factor to it. And all you have to do if you're Penn State and it, you're going up against Ohio State every year, you're going up against Michigan every year, you're going up with the resurgent schools like Indiana and Illinois and some of these other places. And Ryan Day was probably one win away from losing his job. And, and you just have to find a way, to win that big game. And that was a big knock on Ryan Day. James Franklin, I think, is an excellent coach. I think he's done a tremendous job of really resurrecting a dead program at Penn State. And I think there's patience, especially with all of the things going on in college football, probably more so than maybe in the past.
Yeah, we made this point last year. I think you and I talked about it as well. If if 2024 had not been the first year of an expanded college football playoff and Ohio State hadn't been able to kind of backdoor their way into the college football playoff, Ryan Day would have been fired. Instead, he won a national championship because he lost the games that would have made him, Big 12 champ, Big 10 champ, automatic qualifier in a 4-team playoff. And then because they, the body of work was good enough that they kind of backed into the college football playoff and won a national championship, he's like, it changes your whole reputation. One game. So, yeah, it's wild when the stakes are that high.
Yeah, Ryan Day probably would be the head coach at North Carolina right now, or who knows, maybe UCLA. I mean, he certainly would be sought after, and so would James Franklin, for that matter. And you're seeing a trend with some of these schools that they're getting rid of these coaches early, and they want to put themselves in a position for a new coach. And if Penn State's moving that direction, you might see a firing just with that trend.
Before I let you go, how much do you read into Broncos Eagles?
Look, it's the same thing. The NFL is the teams are so evenly matched, and there's so many crazy things happening in the NFL in weeks. You just kind of scratch your head with things. You either have to embrace it and just say there's parity, and you're going to see crazy games, and it's going to come down to a lot of teams with a chance to make the playoffs at the end of the year, which I think people like. I love it personally. I love that. I love the craziness of it. I love the unpredictability of it. I love that, 1 week that team is a sure bet to go to the Super Bowl, and the next week, they're ready to fire the coach. And I just think it's navigating yourself through all that madness and finding a way to win 10, 11, 12 games in a season is a challenge, and it but it makes it exciting. It makes it compelling.
Scott, always love picking your brain. Thanks for the time, sir.
You got it. Have a good day.
Scott Mitchell, you can find him immediately preceding our show on the Down and Dirty. And, of course, you'll hear him beside Bill Riley and Stevenson Sylvester on pregame, the call, and the official postgame right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700, 92 on FM on Saturday nights. Our station pregame begins at 2. No. Begins at 4. And then next week against BYU is when it'll start at 2. So Porter and company at about 4 this coming weekend. I know you're sick of waiting because the bye week got real long, but up next, the Daily Dump. And a mistake even worse than the butt fumble, potentially. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92 on FM. Our 1 o'clock hour is going to be big. We've got Adrian Denny between the pipes. Talk a little Utah Mammoth. And then Dale Murphy is going to join us as the MLB playoffs are in full swing. Get it? Full swing. Full swing. Swing and a miss on that one. All right.
Not as good as the ones I come up with, but A for effort.
Daily Dump brought to you by our friends over at Valley Plumbing, and there's some stuff that a lot of people are going to want to flush away after today's Daily Dump.
There we go. He's back.
Mark Sanchez, the butt fumble. Remember that? You were punchline for a lot of years. Can't really stay out of the bad headlines, although there's many, many years between that happening.
Turned into a great broadcaster, in my opinion. Yeah, and then Saturday happened.
So you saw – this is why social media is so interesting, right? There's the initial reports were that, oh, my gosh, Mark Sanchez was involved in some type of altercation, and he has been stabbed. And you're like, oh, wow.
Looks like an obvious victim in this altercation.
Like, that's scary stuff.
Yeah.
People, when you spend time in certain cohorts, right? Like, I've had an opportunity because of my MMA world to be around, a lot of cops, a lot of military veterans, a lot of folks that are, involved in real life conflict scenarios. And one thing that everyone will say is that there's no such thing as a good stabbing. It's bad no matter what. And that probably seems obvious, but like any kind of blade scenario, it just gets ugly fast. And they all kind of are scared of it for good reason. So I'm thinking about, things through that lens, like, oh my gosh, like what happened that Mark Sanchez, somebody walked up to him, mugged him. You just like your mind goes through all these possible scenarios. You're like, that's really unfortunate. And then we find out he's hospitalized, and, the injuries are pretty serious, but he's stable.
Yeah, critical condition. Was brought there in critical condition, but then quickly they said they were able to stabilize him, yeah.
And then the next headline is that, well, now that he's stable, we're going to arrest him. Oh, what?
For me, I told you this off air, OC, my jaw dropped when I went, like, wait a second, okay. Arrested?
So, again, like, as you're finding out, oh, this person got stabbed and he's a public figure, and then it's always like, oh, thoughts and prayers, I hope he's okay. And that is still true. You hope he's okay. Yeah. But then they're like, also we're arresting him because it turns out, according now to multiple sources, and like the reason they arrested him, and one of his charges has been upgraded to a felony charge, apparently Mark Sanchez was the aggressor in this whole scenario. It was like a 69-year-old Uber driver, basically, that – there was a conflict about who was parking where, whatever, and Mark, according to these reports, was the aggressor and escalated the situation, and that the person who stabbed him may have done so in self-defense.
Yeah, some of the details that I caught up on this morning because I'll be honest with you, loaded college football Saturday as it always is, loaded NFL Sunday. I saw the headlines, the initial one that he was stabbed, looks like he's the victim, but he's stable in the hospital, and then later he's arrested, and I went, okay, I'll dig into the details more later. So this morning I caught up on, it wasn't until this morning I really caught up on all the details here. So it says one of the misdemeanors he was initially charged with, OC, was unlawful entry of a vehicle. And so
I think I said Uber driver. This was a truck driver.
You're right, truck driver. So, and it was the loading dock at the Westin Hotel that presumably Mark was staying at in Indianapolis. He goes into his truck, into this guy's truck, and, lies about how the hotel told him he could. Well, he's also charged with public intoxication, and the 69-year-old truck driver saying he was slurring his words really bad. So he just really drunk is what it sounds like. The hotel told me I could do this. Well, that wasn't true. And then when things, and I don't know how things escalated from there, but the truck driver tried to grab his phone. Mark prevents him from doing so. So the truck driver tries to mace him. That does not work on Mark Sanchez. So then he pulls out his knife and stabs him in self-defense multiple times. Just an insane story. We say insane and crazy and myself way too much, but this is truly that when it comes to this. And yeah, I still hope that Mark comes out of this okay. I think he's been released from the hospital and went straight to jail from the hospital was one of the updates I saw. But it's just unbelievable how he went from public perception of, wow, this guy is an obvious victim. Too bad that this is terrible that this happened to Mark Sanchez, who I think has become a very likable guy, right? As I said, in my opinion, became a very good media personality, and I think to me has always come off as very likable, even when he was doing the butt fumble and stuff as a player. And now he's like this guy who crossed the line to the point where someone felt like they needed to get a weapon out to defend themselves. Just
and by the way,
insane.
It matters a lot. So my dad just turned 70. All right.
Yeah.
This is a 69-year-old truck driver. He drives for a company that recycles cooking oil. All right. This is a blue collar type dude. All right. I don't know how much time you spend around people who are not you're not decrepit and elderly when you're in your 60s, but
especially if you're still working like this man is.
If you're a 40-something, 39, 40-year-old professional athlete, former professional athlete, you shouldn't be getting in physical altercations with people who are in their late 60s, man. Kids, don't drink. All right? Absolutely intoxication has something to do with this. It doesn't justify any behavior when you say, oh, well, I was drunk, so, but Mark Sanchez got stabbed because, according to the reports and the CCTV, the footage that there is being described by police representatives, he wouldn't leave the dude alone. He kept going after it. After he got pepper sprayed, even after he got pepper sprayed, he advanced on this guy. And so the guy was like, all right, well, this dude who's 20-something years younger than me, 30 years younger than me, is attacking me. I'm going to do what I have to do. That is scary.
Well, and listen, Mark Sanchez doesn't look like Russell Westbrook or anything, but still in very good shape. So maybe this guy didn't recognize him as a former NFL player, but he probably took a look at him and went, this guy is significantly younger than me. He is in really good shape. He's in really good shape enough that I'm scared he could physically overpower me if I don't have any way to defend myself. So that's the other part of this, is that this is a former professional football player who is not even 40 yet, has been out of the game for a long time now, but not even 40 yet, and still looks really good, right? Still looks like he could play a little bit. That's going to scare someone in this truck driver's position. Absolutely. It would scare most of us. Most of us that aren't even close to 70 years old like this man is.
Sucks. Okay. As long as we're talking about scary scenarios, James.
Let me just put a button on this. I have not heard any official word from Fox Sports on this, OC. You haven't seen anything or heard anything about that? No. I'm presuming that he's not going to be working for Fox Sports for a while. I don't know if that means they're going to fire him or if he just will be on extended leave of absence, but he will not be calling games for a while, and I don't think, but no official word yet.
I know this doesn't matter for most people. His wife, by the way, just had his wife's an actress.
Okay.
And there's this new show, Chad Powers out. It's like a football.
Oh, yeah, the Hulu show, yeah.
She's in that show. So the timing for her is pretty bad, right? Because, when you're launching something like that, you don't want negative PR around.
The promotion certainly matters, yeah.
So that's – anyway, talking about other scary scenarios. What is your appetite for, I don't know, high-altitude adventure, going – scuba diving, the extreme behaviors where people push beyond regular human limits? There's the ultra runners, there's the mountain climbers, the deep sea divers. Do you have any interest in any of that?
And doing it?
Yeah.
Not a ton, I'll be honest with you, because I'm a little bit too risk averse for that sort of thing. But it is fun to hear about and see the videos of other people doing it.
By the way, nothing. James just showed me pictures this morning of his 4-month-old son. Very adorable. Nothing makes you even more risk averse like having a kid, right? So the reason I bring this up, I've been fascinated with mountain climbing, Mount Everest, especially. Not that I want to do it. I don't want to do it.
You like to hear the stories.
The stories, I'm fascinated because it's one of those things, like ultra runners, I don't understand you, okay? I really don't. I admire what you're doing? Yes. When I was working in a previous life, a different job, I interviewed a guy who was trying to get a job with the company I was working for. He's like the Iron Cowboy, I think he calls himself. He's the guy who did 30 Ironman triathlons in 30 days. I think his ultimate accomplishment, he did 50 Ironmans in 50 days in 50 different states.
Holy cow.
It's like supreme endurance athleticism.
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, why? What are you doing? The suffering for the sake of suffering, I don't get it. I had, when I was in Boy Scouts when I was a kid, we had one of the guys in the ward that I grew up in, and I did scouts with the ward. He had climbed Mount Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain in South America, right?
Oh, okay.
And so they invited him to come talk to us in Troop 1531, shout out. And he was like, hey guys, high altitude climbing is terrible. It was not the inspirational speech that I think the scout leaders expected it would be. He was like, I've never been more miserable in my life. You feel like you're drowning. You can't breathe when you're up there. And that was on Mount Aconcagua. That was not on Everest, right?
Yeah, not even Kilimanjaro even. But
I'm probably viewing all this stuff through the lens of that, like when I was 13 years old, I heard that
straight
story
a little bit
from somebody I know, and I'm just like, oh, wow. So the whole Everest thing, especially now because social media has ruined a lot of these places because everyone's just dying for the photo op, like our own Zion National Park is way more crowded than it used to be. Some of those hikes that if you went 15 years ago, they were just like peaceful and beautiful and stuff. They're now literally like standing in line at Disney. And apparently that's how it is at Mount Everest now, where you're just in a line hiking up Everest. You pay like $200,000 to get guided up Everest in this life-threatening scenario, and you're just crowded in with thousands of other people. There was a storm that blew into Everest this weekend that stranded 1,000 people at the summit or near the summit. James, can you imagine a worse scenario that you're like 28,000 feet in the air on a freezing cold mountain and your Sherpa turns and says, hey, there's some bad weather coming in. We're just going to have to hunker down. And you're like, no, let's get out of here. Well, it's going to be here in 8 minutes. And we can't get anywhere. Put your tent up. We're just going to have to ride this thing out. And it's you and probably like 10 people you know, and then 990 strangers that are now all trapped in a life-threatening scenario, crowded onto a mountain in a blizzard where there's not enough oxygen. There's probably not enough warm clothing. Well, there probably is enough warm clothing for everyone to have their own. But like 400 and something people have died on Everest, right? So there's dead bodies visible to you from where you're at. And now you're trapped. They're stuck, James. 350 of the 1,000 or so people that were trapped have been able to work their way back down. But there's avalanches, there's ice falls, there's all this stuff. There are still like 650 people that are trapped at the top of Mount Everest. You paid $250,000 to go get this Instagram photo and tell everyone that you made it to the top of Everest, and now you're stuck and you might not make it back.
And listen, I would bet there's a good number of these people that not train like the people who traditionally try to climb Everest before it got this crowded, right? Like, that's the other thing you got to consider here. If the motivation truly is to get the great Instagram post, you're probably not training the way you should be for Everest. So that makes this situation even worse for some of those people. And maybe I'm presuming too much. I'm skewing a little too negative on that, but that's the perception of it. If you frame it that way, like, my goodness. Yeah, that's terrible. That makes me want to do it even less.
I mean, we've all been in scenarios where you're just like, oh my gosh, what? I'm so stupid. Why did I put myself in this situation? That would be one where you're just like, well, I mean, I came up here. I wanted to be here where I'm at right now. And now you're hoping that someone can get you down from one of the most dangerous places and one of the most isolated places and one of the most impossible to reach places on planet Earth. I'm blown away by the desire to climb all the way to. If you're a high altitude climber out there, text in 877-353-0700. If you're like an ultra endurance athlete, I feel like I should understand because like I participated in combat sports for a long time, never ever thinking I would make anything close to real money at it, like just being like, oh, I just do this because I love it. I enjoy it, the competition. And I know there's a lot of people who are just like, that's a stupid thing to do. Why would you do that? But
you enjoy getting your head beat in?
Yeah, like, why do you like getting punched in the face? And my answer is, I didn't like that. I liked punching other people in the face.
Yeah.
But like
I liked winning after getting
if
punched.
You're climbing up a mountain, you don't get to punch anyone in the face. You just get to stand on top of the mountain. Like, try and explain it to me. 877-353-0700. Try and explain to me why you want to run a 50-mile race. What, like, just to prove to yourself that you can? I respect that. I do. I really do. I wish I could understand it because it's amazing that Mount Everest is there, and we know that it's the highest place on the planet Earth, right? I don't want to go there, especially if I have to wait for 800 other people to get there and then turn around and come back down.
Yeah, it sounds like it's gotten even less desirable for the yous and me's of the world to want to even try it. OC with that kind of overcrowding, and then the potential, it's still the potential for the bad weather and getting stranded in a terrible place, like and being in a terrible situation, but with 1,000 other people instead of like dozens of other people is what it probably used to be for the longest time. Like that makes me want to do it even less. But hats off to those that do try these. I'm with you. Like I admire the people who try these kinds of things. But it will not be me.
Okay, small correction. Apparently, it's actually more like around 200 hikers are still around.
Oh, so 200. Okay.
The local news outlets reporting that about 1,000 people were stuck in the blizzard, and then 350 made it back down. Apparently, that they overshot that. It wasn't. So it was more like 550, 600.
And there's about 200 left. Man, that's still a lot of people stuck.
Sucks. All right. Sean O'Connell Show. We'll double up here. We come back with Adrian Denny, and Utah Mammoth start their season officially next week. How's the preseason going? We'll find out next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 3 on the Sean O'Connell Show. We've been so wrapped up in the college football world, NFL football world, that it's easy to forget we're a week away from NHL hockey. Season begins tomorrow. At the Delta Center, we've got games coming up in a week. We've got, let's see, Utah Mammoth, first game of the season on the road at Colorado, happening Thursday. Holy, that little logo, by the way. I love the Utah Mammoth logo. When it's tiny, reduced down to like the scoreboard size at scrolling down, you need to zoom in a little bit. I didn't even think of that. It's a little bit too detailed almost to be shrunken down as far as ESPN has to shrink it down. You don't think about these things. I should have thought about that. Anyway, we welcome our Utah Mammoth insider, Adrian Denny. Between the pipes we go. Conversation brought to you by our friends at Angora and Aladdin Industries. And we get you ready for a Utah Mammoth season that we think and hope will be a very promising one as we're deeper into the rebuild and I think kind of out of rebuild mode, hopefully, maybe. Adrian Denny, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Sean, when you watch Mammoth games on SCG Plus and Mammoth Plus and Utah 16 locally here, if you see our brand new score bug, you'll see the Mammoth logo. It pushes out. It pushes out of the usual kind of score bug box where the logos are, so you can see what we did with that. It's bigger than it'd usually be if it's just boxed into a usual score bug. It's sticking out there, so it's really cool.
I like that. That's a great way to handle it. It's such a sick logo, and I want people to fully appreciate it. And it sounds like you've achieved that with that score bug. So, look, I think there's a lot of positives and optimism and all that stuff as we head toward this season. The club wanted to get Cooley extended, and so far no agreement has been reached. In fact, the latest headline is that he has rejected a pretty lucrative offer that the Mammoth extended. What do you know? What do you think about the conversations happening between the club and Logan Cooley?
Yeah, the good news is he's not a free agent until June 30th, so that there is time, right? Connor McDavid got extended today. Kirill Kaprizov got extended last week on the biggest deal. And NHL history, McDavid took a 2-year kind of hometown discount to stay exactly where his salary is on this current contract to stay with the Oilers. And those were kind of the first 2 guys that the NHL has been waiting on from the free agency group from next summer to get signed. So you've got that component. You've got the new collective bargaining agreement that starts on July 1st next year, and the salary cap is going up, and it's just going to keep going further up. So guys that are free agents going into next summer, it's the wait and see, I think, is kind of expected. It to go a little slower with this group as a whole versus how it did last year, where Dylan Gunther was extended in training camp, as he would have been a free agent on July 1st of this year. So, yeah, don't know the context, obviously, right? We're not in the room, but a negotiation to me is, yeah, there's going to be offers, there's going to be counter offers, there's going to be back and forth, right? So that's kind of what I take on that. And Logan is going to be a restricted free agent. Typically, there's not too much concern on getting restricted free agents re-signed just in general there. I saw a quote from the GM of the Avs just a few minutes ago. He was talking about one of their pending free agents for next summer, Marty Natchez, and he basically said, yeah, I've talked to his agent and we've had conversations, and I'll leave it at that. And I'd say that's probably a pretty good answer for how things are going there. Chris McFarland, the GM of the Avs, talking about Marty Natchez, like that's kind of how things go, right? In a negotiation, you talk, you go back and forth, and ultimately get a deal. So I think that's what you get. Yeah, maybe if there was an offer, but when you're in a negotiation for a contract, I think that's pretty typical. So with all those variables, to me, it's not any kind of surprise.
So sports fans who are diving into the NHL world now and maybe haven't been as dyed in the wool, right? It's hard to put into context like what kind of money we're talking about with rising star players. I mean, the top, you just referenced this, the top NHL contract in league history is like a mid-level exception in the NBA right now. So it's really strange to think about, when Cooley, we're talking, offers approaching, a $10 million a year sort of average contract value. And in the NFL, that's like mid-level money. In the NBA, that's like your end of the bench kind of guy almost. So like what kind of number makes sense for you for a Logan Cooley, who we think is, we know he's a rising young star. He's a player with unlimited potential, but he's already reached some of that potential. He's already demonstrated that at this level, he can be an extremely impactful player. And it seems like he's someone that the franchise wants to keep around for the long term. What does that look like from a numbers standpoint? Because you have to leave room for other guys, supporting cast, et cetera, et cetera. Are we talking, like 10 million might get this thing settled a year, or is that too much for someone of his caliber?
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's look at the Kirill Kaprizov deal that he just signed, the biggest deal in NHL history, $17 million. The report was he turned down 16-ish million. And as I looked at that number that they had for Cooley, I thought, that's kind of in the neighborhood for what I expected for players like Logan that are coming up as free agents for July 1st. We've seen a couple that have gotten signed that have been a little below that from players that I think are Hudson from Montreal going up to class and so when it came out that the Kaprizov $16 million plus deal was rejected, well, then they came back and they signed it at something pretty close, right? So as I said, in a negotiation, I think you're usually pretty close in most cases. There's been some instances at the Anaheim Ducks with some of their restricted free agents have had some initial reports of numbers that weren't necessarily in the ballpark where they ended up signing with. But I think for the most part, when you've got your financial guys and you're presenting an offer to an agent, that you're usually pretty close to where you're ultimately going to end up.
The Connor McDavid deal, since we're talking contracts, it never felt like he was super interested in going somewhere else, but this is a team that has to demonstrate that while he and Draisaitl are in the building, that they're ready to, make the necessary adjustments to actually get a cup. And it's a 2-year extension, so giving them a hometown discount, is this signaling something beyond like, hey, this is your last 2 years? How should we interpret this deal that he did with his hometown franchise?
I think it looks really good for Connor McDavid for what he just did, because Leon Draisaitl is on a max deal and got more money when he re-signed last summer, and McDavid taking the exact same deal. There's not term involved, right? It's just a 2-year deal, so it's not a major commitment, but I think it really makes him look like a nice guy here, just getting it done before the season starts, right? So that's not going to be that's been the story in Canada all summer, and things are different in Edmonton and Toronto and Vancouver in terms of the media and in terms of stories and badgering, and it's I don't think folks would believe it what it's like up there, but I don't think it would compare to anything that we have in the U.S. in terms of media scrutiny and just everywhere you go something to story is would have been McDavid not being signed coming up on a contract expiring next summer. So I think it makes him look like a really nice guy that he took this deal to stay at where he is to get it done before the season is, and I think it really eliminates a lot of distraction, and it keeps the wait and see. Okay, what's Edmonton going to be able to do? Right, they're totally strapped by the salary cap. For instance, their 3 goalies that they have under contract make like $6.5 million total dollars. So, right, because they've got Draisaitl and McDavid, and they made a lot of other big long-term kind of signings, good or bad, that have kind of strapped them. But I think McDavid doing this gives Edmonton a couple years in this window to stay as flexible as possible to win a cup, which is what he says that he wants to do, and that's why he wants to be there.
All right, swinging things back to the Utah Mammoth, what did we learn in the preseason that we didn't know already?
I think you just look at little things. Like for me, it's, okay, how is this team going to get 8 to 10 more standings points next year so they can make the playoffs, right? That's the biggest thing, right? You want to make the playoffs. So how are you going to do that? So you go out, the acquisitions over the summer, Brandon Tanev, Nate Schmidt, JJ Peterka, bring in a really solid backup in Vitek Vanacek. But I saw on the ice the team as a whole, like, doing some additional things to win games. For instance, the penalty kill was really good during the preseason, and Dylan Guenther was playing on the penalty kill. You don't always see your best players on the penalty kill because they're playing so much 5-on-5, so much on the power play. And so when you put a player out there like Guenther, and it was unexpected for me, but we saw it, and I like when you have your best players and how you can manage it from a time on ice standpoint on the penalty kill, because if you can shave down a goal every 5 or 10 or 15 games that you're not allowing, ultimately that's going to add up into another game that you're able to win, forced to overtime, etc. Right? Just during the course of a year, and incrementally those points are going to pile up 1 or 2 at a time. Thought the power play looked really good too, and that's another thing. Yet another power play goal. Utah's power play was pretty good last year, top half of the league, but you go, again, you're adding another power play goal every 5, 10, 15 games. That's going to kind of help you get pushed over the top, and I think we saw how Tanev can help. We saw him score a breakaway goal. His nickname's Turbo. We saw Turbo time for the first time at Delta Center on Saturday, with him just kind of making a play off of a face-off. So I think, Peterka could put some pucks in the net. I think we just saw a lot of little incremental things in addition to the guys that were added that are just going to add a goal here or take away a goal against, that I think are going to, over the course of 20, 25, 82 games, show how they're going to pick up more standings points than last year to make the playoffs.
Are we going to get any major surprises with how, final roster, how the kind of call-up, send-down adjustments are made as this season progresses?
I think the biggest thing today, OC, is going to be at 3 o'clock. And the biggest question is going to be who's going to start the season injured, right? That is going to have an additional roster spot open. For instance, Alex Kerfoot didn't play in the preseason. We didn't see Barrett Hayton for the final couple games. We didn't see Liam O'Brien for the final couple games. So are those guys in a spot where they're going to start the year injured, or is it going to be like Logan Cooley, who didn't play on Saturday, hasn't played since the second preseason game a couple weeks ago, but is going to be ready to go on Thursday night? So we didn't get updates on Hayton, on Kerfoot, and on O'Brien. So that's going to be the biggest thing at 3 o'clock today is, are they going to be on the roster? Or are they going to be on injured reserve? And with that being the case, then does that keep an opening to start the season for Daniil Boot, guys like Dmitry Simashev, Andrew Agozzino, Kyler Yamamoto? Or do you want to stick with the plan if you had it, and that is to start Simashev and Boot in the American Hockey League in Tucson to get the year going? Does that change anything? I think we saw great camps from both of those two guys, but the question is, do you want them in the AHL to start the year playing every situation, big minutes, or up here where, as we saw on Thursday night, up to 1/3 period, Daniil Boot didn't play for the final 4 or 5 minutes of the game because we're out there with our experienced players who are more in tune for those situations, 6-on-5 with an extra attacker for the other team, no goalie, right? You've got your group that you're going to be with right there in those spots.
Where do you stand on that? Would you rather see a guy, if you're trying to develop somebody for the long term, but maybe that's not even the right way to look at it. Maybe you need some contribution from Simashev and Boot in a short term, but are limited NHL minutes how do they compare when it comes to value, limited NHL minutes with extensive AHL minutes?
My preference, and I think that this is because I'm entering year number 5 of the Bill Armstrong doctrine, is you can't bake for long enough in the AHL. And I have felt since I started training camp, okay, looking at this roster, looking at how Bill's operated, those guys probably do start in the American Hockey League. So I saw it with Dylan Gunther first half of the season 2 years ago. Started in the AHL. It shocked him. He was disappointed. But by the time we got to mid-January and he got called up because the player got suspended for 3 games, and, it was probably just going to be for a week or two, and he went up there, and he was up there for the rest of the year. Was one of their best players, and we saw what he did last year in his first full NHL season. So I think that's probably the best example of a star. It shocked him to not make the team out of camp 2 years ago, but I think it was really good for him to go play down there and be top minutes every night in every situation. And versus, up here we're trying to win. We're no longer in the business of developing prospects in the National Hockey League. As you said, the rebuild is over, and every night it's what can we do to win, not, oh, well, that was a good lesson that Simashev just learned in the third period. Say, for instance, if he turns the puck over and it results in a 3-2 loss with the goal scored with 80 seconds left, right? However, OC, I'll tell you, Simashev looked like an NHL defenseman during camp. So in that sense, I would say that he probably exceeded what we expected to see from him. And Daniil Boot had a really nice camp as well. Scored a couple goals, made some really nice plays. He's so big. He's 6'5". It's just something that you don't come across every day. You just don't have a lot of that on any given roster. So those are two things that from camp might have tilted things back in a different direction. Whereas, okay, those guys are ready for the NHL now. There's no doubt we're going to not have to send them back to the AHL. They're good to the NHL. Let's go.
Between the Pipes with Adrian Denny for a couple more minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show, brought to you by Aladdin Industries, Valley Plumbing. So, as we talked about, Thursday, first game of the season for this Utah Mammoth team. It'll be on the road. Your first 3 games are going to be on the road. What do you expect against the Colorado Avalanche?
I don't think it's one thing that concerns me about the game on Thursday, just getting started right out of the gate, is the Avs play tomorrow night against the LA Kings. So they're going to have that first game out of the way, and Utah is going to be going into their first game against Colorado, a playoff team in my opinion, probably favored to win the division. So you're going to have to come out on your toes. You can't fall behind 1-0, 2-0, or it's going to be over. Just with Colorado playing that first game against a playoff team tomorrow night. So that's what I think. Big game, but it's going to be something where you're going straight into the fire on Thursday night. It's not like you're playing a team like we did last year with the Chicago Blackhawks first game of the year, an ultimate last place team, and you're both playing your first game of the season at the same time, where you can come out and maybe get away with some first game mistakes or not quite being in sync for NHL regular season hockey.
What do you need to see out of the first three for this Utah team? Like 2-1, are you okay? Should we start hitting panic? No, we don't do that, because obviously it's going to be a long season, but you want to get off on the right foot, and maybe that's tough on the road against this Avs team, but in these first three that are road games before you get back to the Delta Center next week in a newly remodeled Delta Center. Most of us will have our eyes on that for the first time. What do you need to be, what's your record need to be after the first three?
I think you'd like to take 4 of 6 points to win 2 out of 3. You go to Colorado, you go to Nashville, who was the lottery team last year, very disappointing year for them. They think they're going to be better. Then you go to Chicago, who was the last place team last year. They're going to be a little better. So I think it's a trip where Utah can get off to a good start. Last year, they played that first game at Delta Center against Chicago, won it 5-2, and then went on the road, played the Rangers. Before that, the Islanders, Devils, Ducks went 2-1-1. I like being on the road early in the season because to me, it's an extension of training camp. You're staying together. You're all focused on hockey. Kind of stay in that routine, playing every other day. I think that's good for a team early in the season. So I think they can do what they did last year. I think they can take 2 out of 3. They sneak one out in Colorado. Nashville's probably, it was a team Utah struggled against last year, even though the Predators did have a bad year. But I think with the roster Utah has going into the season and how excited they are and how good of a team they are, I think even if they don't win in Colorado on Thursday night, or they take a point for an overtime loss or shootout loss, they can still come back with 4 of 6, and I'd say 4 of 6 is the goal, just to be strong out of the gate, so you're not playing catch up just like that as you come home. And you got a 4-game homestand against Calgary, who didn't make the playoffs last year, against San Jose, who didn't make the playoffs last year, against Boston, who didn't make the playoffs last year. So those are your first 3 home games. I think you can get off to a really, really good start, and the road trip can be the first part of that.
All right, before I let you go, how should we interpret this fun fact? I've been looking it up. For the first 2 weeks of the NHL regular season, which of course is coming up, the only arenas you can get into, the only arena is more expensive to get into than the Delta Center is going to be for the Mammoth home games, are in Canada, where, of course, hockey is life. There's no United States domestic ticket that is more expensive to get into than the Delta Center for the Utah Mammoth. How should we interpret that?
I'm an economics minor, OC, proudly from the University of Utah with my degree in mass communications, and I'm going to say supply and demand. Number one, there is just over 12,000 seats in Delta Center where you can see both goals, right? There's obstructed view seats, 1 goal view seats that are available. But I'm saying because you've got a smaller arena configuration right now than we're ultimately going to have when we're over 17,000. That's number one. But number two, Utah's starving to watch hockey. And the dollar values for the tickets last year, I know because I paid for this several times. it did not go down throughout the course of the year. It wasn't just like the Chicago game was crazy, and then when you got into November, December, January, the ticket prices went down on SeatGeek. They stayed steady, and I think went up in a lot of cases. So we've got a starving market that's going to contend to be in a playoff spot, and we also have probably 70% of what our ultimate capacity is going to be for full view seats.
I think it means we're hungry for hockey, like you said, and we get it starting tomorrow. Utah Mammoth, not until Thursday, but we're right there. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. It's always great to talk to you. Welcome back.
It's always good to be back. Adrian Denny, Between the Pipes, brought to you by Aladdin Industries and our friends over at Valley Plumbing. James, what do you think? What do you think of that? If you want to go to a game in Toronto or Vancouver or Calgary, you got to pay more. But as far, I think I found one game that's more expensive on average right now than the early part of the season, and that is Edmonton versus at New York Rangers. So, like, New York City, obviously going to be more expensive anyway. Edmonton, Stanley Cup hopeful team. Like, that's a huge matchup. Other than that, this is the hottest ticket in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it means anything as far as they're going to be comparatively competitive with the other teams, the couple of teams that are that hockey means a lot more here, just like it does in Canada. I don't think that those things are true. But what it does mean is that I think Adrian nailed it. The unobstructed view seating is a lot more limited than in most other places, just about every arena in the NHL besides here. And it's just new. Newer is always better, OC, right? Like, everybody's so excited about this team, especially because we think that they're going to contend right away. They're going to make the playoffs this year, and then if not this year, next year they're going to be on the short list of potential championship contenders. That seems to be the trajectory that they're going on. I think that's really what's going on here. I think, and if they continue on that trajectory, OC, the prices may even go up, right? If it's not quite that way, or there's a bit of there's a small lull at some point, maybe the prices go down a little bit. But I think that the demand is still going to be super high, especially because we think this team is going to be really good this year and even better in the coming years.
Interesting stuff. Big thanks to Adrian.
I wouldn't have guessed that, by the way. That'd be the third most expensive ticket on all of NHL. But if you really think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
It's like, yeah, I mean, there's people are hungry for hockey right now, and we care about hockey as much as Canadians, according to those numbers. So there it is. How much do you care about baseball? Well, Dale Murphy, been doing some work with Big League Utah. He's also, of course, a man who should be in the Hall of Fame, multiple-time MVP, and he joins us next. Talk a little America's pastime. Dale Murphy in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Checking in on a little baseball with the playoffs in full swing. Tigers, Mariners, Yankees, Blue Jays, Dodgers, Phillies, Cubs, Brewers. I don't know if we'll have time. We'll try to get to all of it with Dale Murphy, the legend, who joins us now on the Sean O'Connell Show. Dale, thanks for giving us some time. How are you, sir?
Great, doing great. Watching some fun postseason baseball. Thanks for having me on, Sean. Thank you.
I always appreciate you giving us some time. Before we get into what's going on with these Major League Baseball playoffs, what do we know? What's going on behind the scenes with Big League Utah, with the eventual and hopeful idea that we will be a Major League city ourselves here in Salt Lake?
Yeah, working every day. I'm not working every day on it, but Steve Starks and the gang at Big League Utah are working every day. Establishing relationships, actually traveling. I know Steve's been traveling. Like I say, I know he's in New York, going to games there and meeting everybody. Just laying out our case for what we can offer here, Major League Baseball. Obviously, it's going to take the time frame when no one really knows, but we do know there's a CBA coming up, and I'm sure expansion needs to be approved, obviously, by everybody, and that comes up after next year. And just like I say, just continuing to develop relationships and letting everybody know what we have here, which personally I think is really good. And I think what I hear from traveling around the country, talking to people, we're optimistic, and other people will say, you got some good things going there, and just positive vibes, really. I'm obviously not in touch with the commissioner's office, and not getting out in front of what he's doing and what's going on, but just talking to people in the game and around the country. Everybody really likes what we have here.
How does the impending CBA situation affect a timeline, if at all?
How will it affect it?
Yeah, will it?
Yeah. It's right. Well, it remains to be seen, but the CBA is up after next year, and so I'm imagining, after next year they start negotiating, vote on, players and owners vote on expansion, and so I think last year people are saying 3 to 5 years. It's nothing set in stone, obviously, until just no approvals have been made to even expand yet. But the commissioner has made many statements that he'd like to. Everybody, I think, would like to get to 32 teams, and so it's just a big operation. It's like getting an Olympic bid. You have to have a group. You got to have the money. You got to have the organization. Just everything. And so people throw out cities, and like Charlotte is a great place, and I've been to their AAA ballpark there. They have a great location for that, and it's a great market. But as I understand, there's no registered group trying to get a team. So, there people throw these cities out, but what we have here in Portland and Nashville, and as far as I'm aware, I don't know of other cities that are as organized and have registered with Major League Baseball that we're pursuing it. So, so the time frame, just we don't really know. And all the cities that are involved, those are we're part of the big three, I guess. But you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But the time frame I hear is always 3 to 5 years.
All right, let's get to some playoff baseball. Are you surprised by anything you've seen so far? Now that we've advanced to the divisional series, and you've got there's a hullabaloo over Toronto smashing New York over the weekend. But have you been surprised by anything you've seen so far?
Not really. It's been good baseball. I know the Yankees went to the World Series last year, but I never pick them. in the last, I love Aaron Judge, but him and Giancarlo Stanton, to me, just can be pitched to, and they strike out so much. They did get to the World Series last year, so they made it that far, but I have not liked them the last 10 years just because they strike out so much in postseason. So, and the Blue Jays are on fire. I think New York will win a game. I mean, it could go 5. I think the Dodgers could go 5 too, but I like them a lot. But I think Phillies will give them, a few headaches. The Dodgers in the last month, their pitching has really settled in. I think they got a great team. I love what Milwaukee's doing as well. They tend to play kind of small ball a little bit. They don't strike out that much. They got really good pitching, but I think that's going to go 5. We'll see. But I love what I'm seeing so far. I like Seattle, although Detroit's got some really good pitching. Although they got to Skubal, yesterday. So it's going to be tough to pick. But if I were to pick right now, I'd go Dodgers and Blue Jays, I think.
What do you think of Cal Raleigh? I'm always partial to catchers because that's what I grew up playing. And,
For sure.
He does it all. He's
sure
record setter, record setter this year. He's 28 years old and has really come into a place now where I think a lot more is expected from you when you have a season like this and you've been part of the headlines all season long. What is that like to try to then deliver playoff wins? It's great to have all the personal accolades, but now you're trying to carry your team through a postseason. What's it like for Cal Raleigh right now?
Well, I think he's going to be the MVP. People talk about Aaron Judge's great year he had, but we got a guy that had a great year, and he's a catcher. Very demanding, much more demanding than the outfield. So whenever you have comparable situations offensively, I always look at the position. If it's an outfielder and you got a comparable guy at shortstop, I'm going with the shortstop. What Cal Raleigh's done is incredible, especially being behind the plate so much. So I love what he's doing. I think they got a good thing going there. I mean, I think they're, I think they'll beat Detroit, but it's but I just, it's hard to figure it out. But I think Cal Raleigh's just found himself, and he's had an MVP season. So I think he's just enjoying this. Yeah, you're right. You can put some numbers together, but playoff baseball is completely, it's a new season. That's why I like Milwaukee. I just think they play a little bit more small ball than anybody else. I think, the Dodgers are capable of doing that. So I think it's going to be a great National League, finish here. But, I love Cal Raleigh. I think it's been fun. I caught a little bit, growing up and getting into the big leagues, I caught a little bit. And, there's obviously no more demanding position. So what he's done offensively and defensively as well, because your head is so much into calling the game. And then he's just a tremendous switch hitter too. So it's been an incredible MVP season for Cal Raleigh.
What are the Braves going to do with the manager position?
Good. Some interesting names have popped up online, and I think one of the most interesting. There's three I think of. Is David Ross. I think Walt Weiss will interview. I hope Eddie Perez interviews as well with the Braves. Walt Weiss, Eddie Perez with the Braves. David Ross caught there and managed the Cubs for a while. But this head coach for the University of Tennessee's name is getting thrown out there. And I think that'd be incredible. First that I'm aware of, someone going from college to the big leagues, and I think it's Vitello. I'm sorry, I don't have his name right in front of me. But he's got some really good things going at the University of Tennessee, and that could be kind of intriguing. He might interview. We'll see what happens. Chipper's not going to do it. He said, I don't want to do it, but he'll be a hitting. He said, I'll be a hitting coach, which is a happy medium if they want to hire him as a hitting coach, which would be a good move. But, we'll see. It's going to be interesting without Brian Snitker. I was happy for Brian. We go back to the early 80s, so I've known Snit for a long time. Happy to see him have such great success, win a World Series, and now will be, a consultant with the Braves for many years to come.
How does it work in a clubhouse when, you're an established player on the team, or you're somebody who's, respected by the front office as a player, and, they're now searching for a manager. And you mentioned Tony Vitello, the University of Tennessee coach. Now you've got, this outsider who could potentially be brought in. I mean, how does it work? Is that somebody who would be embraced by a clubhouse? Baseball is, more than any other sport, full of all these unwritten rules and all these kind of cultural quirks that even fans have a hard time keeping up with. So is that would that be something that, baseball would be excited about, or would the clubhouse be like, oh, this guy doesn't know what it's like to be in the majors? I don't know his resume. I don't know if he spent time in the majors before at all as a player or a prospect or anything. So how would that work?
That's a great question, and I think that's probably why it's never happened before. Because obviously, for obvious reasons, you tend to go with someone who's connected in some way. So I think he's a long shot. I think it's just very interesting, but it would be fascinating to watch. But once it happens, it just I don't know. It's never happened before that I know of. But I think the guys are, professional enough to understand that no one's going to get hired without, a lot of interviews. And, Alex Anthopoulos is not going to hire someone without talking to a lot of people about this person that he's getting ready to hire. And then during the interview process, they would ask Vitello, who are you going to get on your staff? Who are you going to bring along with you? Because, and I'll tell you, the vital thing here, why I obviously think he's a long shot, I don't know his connection to Alex Anthopoulos. The general manager and the manager in baseball, any sport, but especially baseball, and I can bring up two examples, Joe Torre and Cashman as the GM with the Yankees. They were a great team. You have to have a great team as general manager and manager. Bobby Cox and John Schuerholz, and we can find some other ones, but those are the ones I point to as being a great general manager. So you got to have a connection with the general manager. You got to be in lockstep with each other, the vision, who you're going to call up, who you're going to trade for, what free agents you're going to sign. So, I would consider Vitello a long shot. I don't know his connection other than he's been a very successful college coach. So I think it's just fun to talk about, and it's an interesting name. But, the critical connection of success for an organization is that general manager talking together and working together really well.
Well, we'll see how it plays out, and we'll see how these playoff series play out. And, of course, anytime you get an update on what's going on with Big League Utah, let us know.
Absolutely.
Can't tell you how much we appreciate you giving us some time. Hope you and the whole family are doing really well.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much. And it'll be interesting if the Dodgers repeat. We haven't had anybody repeat in 25 years. So that's going to be tough, but I like the way they're looking.
I kind of hope it doesn't happen just because, they're the big money juggernaut, and I can't get behind that.
Yeah, and that's an understatement. Big money.
Thanks, Dale.
All right. Thanks, OC. Bye-bye.
Dale Murphy, baseball legend here in the state of Utah, obviously, and really all around the world. Multiple-time MVP. And for all you Ute fans out there, of course, father of Jake Murphy is probably what makes him most famous. All right, we got to wrap things up next. I thought Spence Checketts in the building. All right, we'll talk to Spence Checketts. Big thanks to Dale Murphy and Adrian Denny for making hour number 3 easy. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Wrapping things up here on the Sean O'Connell Show. The Drive with Spence Checketts is next as we're back in the saddle, pushing towards a big-time matchup this weekend. Utah, Arizona State at Rice-Eccles Stadium, 8:15 kick. Plenty to talk about with that game all week long. Spence Checketts, how are you?
Good to see you, Sean. Happy, handsome haircut for our YouTube viewers. Sean is looking like he is either ready to be on the cover of People magazine or be called to serve. Elder, looks very good.
Oh, thank you.
High and tight, baby.
See, normally I cut my own hair.
Do you really?
I do.
I tried that once. Bad idea.
I cut my own hair for two reasons. A, I'm impatient. B, I'm cheap.
Sure.
And so normally I cut my own hair, and most of the time I think it looks okay. And I was over in Dubai, and the barber of Belfast, his name's Paul Preshaw, and he was down there for he's good friends with Paul Hughes, who's the fighter in our main event challenging for the title. And last time I saw him, we were in Belfast, and he was like, let me cut your hair. And I was like, all right, I don't usually go to barbers, but you can cut my hair. So he saw me down there, and he was just like, oh, your hair looks terrible. Let me cut it. I was like, all right.
Well, you're going to be on TV. You got to look good.
I'm like, you want to give me a haircut? He's like, yeah. So just there in the hotel, he gave me a little cleanup, and it looks good.
Paul Hughes, any relation to Matt Hughes?
No.
Okay.
No. He is a rising star in the game, but now has had he's come up just short in 2 title bouts at 27 years of age. So he's going to have to go back to the drawing board a little bit.
Little love for my knowledge, my MMA knowledge, bringing up little Matt Hughes, little old school.
Yeah, Matt
he was a bad boy for a minute, wasn't he?
To kick around Salt Lake for
yeah,
a
he did.
while.
I've got an autographed Matt Hughes glove.
Yeah, he would come train with us because Jeremy Horn, my coach, and Matt came up together at like the pioneering American camp, Militich Fighting Systems, just in the Quad Cities in Iowa. Such a random place for the birthplace of American MMA. But
Jeremy is good of a guy as he said. I've met him a few times, had him on the show. He just seems like a really, really solid dude.
He's awesome. Yeah. He's very dedicated to the sport.
Yeah. And
so as long as you're on that same wavelength, you're going to get along great with him.
Cool.
He's awesome.
So conclusion week for Utah, right? I don't think 2 conference losses kills your chances, but it might, right?
Mm-hmm.
So especially with 2 head-to-head losses against 2 teams you're going to be jockeying with at the end, so you lose.
Right.
You already lose the tiebreaker to Tech, who's really good, by the way. I mean, I thought Houston's offense was improved. They couldn't move the football at all. And then if you lose to ASU, that's another team at the end that you're going to be jockeying. Does 2 conference losses kill your chances to win a Big 12 championship?
Well, mathematically, no, but against these 2 teams, the point you're making is like probably.
Yeah.
And then you've got BYU, of course, next week, and you got to position yourself momentum-wise and confidence-wise to go down to Provo against a good team. There are right now, Spence, how many teams with 4 wins or better in the Big 12 conference? Do you know off the top of your head?
Is it 5?
It's 11.
It's 11. 5 teams in the top 25, or is that 4?
No. 5. Yeah, that sounds right.
All right.
11 so right
teams.
now, you've got 9 teams that are 4-1 or better. You've got 11 teams that have 4 wins.
Yeah.
Because Kansas and Baylor have already played 6 games, and they've got 4 wins apiece. So, like, that's how many people are still jockeying at this point for a spot in the conference championship game. Texas Tech has the upper hand right now on Utah, to your point. Arizona State is a team that if they come in and they beat you on your home field, now you're hoping and wishing and praying that somebody else takes care of business for you. Right now, Utah – almost on the level of Texas Tech, is still in control of their own destiny, but there are 9 other teams that are also in that position. The margin for error is just not there. I started the show today saying, hey, good news that there's not a bunch of season-ending injuries from what you saw against West Virginia, but this week is critically important. Your season, in a lot of ways, does come down to what happens on Saturday night.
I tend to agree, and it's a big, 4-week stretch, right? Because every weekend there's a game that manifests in the Big 12 that changes my opinion on the landscape. And Cincinnati, early on, you saw Cincinnati play, and you're kind of like, all right, well, maybe that's a team to look out for. A big statement by them over the weekend, and suddenly that Utah-Cincinnati game doesn't look as easy as maybe we thought it would. Jack Kelly goes down for Brigham Young. He was in a sling on the sideline. Will be interesting to see if he's available for the Utah game because that kid is a powerhouse, man. So we'll see. Big week, though. We've got to move away from observation to conclusion at some point. with this Utah football team. And the only test, in my opinion, that they've had that's stiff, they failed. So Saturday's big.
I don't see how it can go that way. The same. Everyone came up short of expectations against Texas Tech, and to have that happen at every position in the booth and everywhere at one time,
Yep.
it just doesn't. It doesn't happen twice for Utah football in a season, any season really.
It was as long as they're healthy, right? I mean, obviously the injuries has derailed them over the past couple of years, but yeah, man, this is what makes this job fun. A week like this and a night like Saturday night at Rice-Echo should be fun.
We'll turn it over to Spence. He'll be talking about this and many other things. And, hey, tomorrow we got a lot going on, so make sure you tune in. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.